want to be executed?
I have to be. Because I will kill again. No, I would do it again. I've been molesting kids nonstop since I was 13 years old, over half my life. Anything happened, I can guarantee I'd do it again, and sooner or later I would kill another child. I've done it before, and at the time I liked it.
In 1989, Wesley Allen Dodd pleaded guilty to his crimes of taking the lives of 3 boys. Dodd killed brothers William Neer, 10, and Cole Neer, 11, in a Vancouver park before strangling 4-year-old Lee Iselli a month later. In 1990, Dodd was sentenced to death. He was given the option of lethal injection or death by hanging. He chose to be hanged for his crimes and dropped all appeals, believing he had to die. He stated numerous times, "I will kill and rape again and enjoy every minute of it." Dodd was hanged on the 5th of January, 1993. His final words were, "I was once asked by somebody, I don't remember who, if there was any way sex offenders could be stopped. I said no. I was wrong. I was wrong when I said there was no hope, no peace. There is hope. There is peace. I found both in the Lord Jesus Christ. Look to the Lord, and you will find peace." Well, that's some intense final words. Didn't leave them hanging on a word whatsoever.
Am I pure evil? Am I the face of terror sitting here in front of you? Or am I able to talk to you man to man?
Most people in this country think you are the face of evil, don't they?
They do. But sitting down here now, and let me make clear, I'm not sitting here trying to influence you. And I'm not putting on a game face. I'm not conning anybody. I'm just being me.
In 1995, Timothy McVeigh took on the nickname Oklahoma City Bomber after setting off a bomb he created that killed 149 adults and 19 children at an Oklahoma City federal building. He was sentenced to death, and when his time came in 2001, he chose to remain silent the entire time the lethal injection took place. He did, however, leave a note behind in place of his valid final words, quoting the last few lines of the poem Invictus by Sir William Ernest Henley. Timothy McVeigh was executed by lethal injection on the 11th of June, 2001. His final words were written, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." If you ask any of the families of the Oklahoma City bombers' victims, they'd say he got off easy. And considering some of the other people on this list, he pretty much did.
For those people who have been given the death penalty, who have been convicted of taking another's life, what should society do?
Okay, well, one of the main arguments of the death penalty is that it will potentially deter other people from committing crimes.
Do you think it will?
Definitely not.
The case of Robert Sullivan is an interesting one. Convicted of murdering Donald Schmidt, an employee in the Howard Johnson restaurant where Sullivan used to work, Schmidt was shot in the head twice with the use of a shotgun in 1972. Sullivan was on death row for over 10 years, and he fought the death penalty with support from the likes of Pope John Paul II. Unfortunately for Sullivan, he was unsuccessful in convincing the Supreme Court that the death penalty was an ineffective, cruel punishment. Sullivan was executed via electric chair on the 1st of December, 1983. Sullivan delivered his final words after fighting the very cause of his death. "In spite of what is about to happen to me, do not quit. I hold no malice to none. May God bless us all." Sullivan spent so much of his sentence never fighting the charges against him, but instead fighting the punishment. His final words, while accepting, are doused in defeat that he wasn't able to change his fate.
Are you frightened about next week?
Well, death is death. A person said one time, he said, "That's a horrible way of dying." I said, "What is a good way? Could you tell me what a good way is to die?"
Billy Wayne Coble was arrested for the murder of Robert and Zelda Veacher, his estranged wife's parents, and her brother, Bobby Veacher, in 1989. Before he murdered Kane Veacher's family, he went to her home and tied her and her daughters up. Coble remains the oldest man to be executed in Texas in more than 100 years. The death penalty was reinstated in Texas in 1982. A little under a decade before the crimes Billy Wayne Coble committed landed him in prison and on death row. Billy Wayne Coble was executed via lethal injection on the 28th of February 2019. His rapid-fire final words were, "Yes, sir, that'll be $5. I love you, and I love you. Mike, I love you. Where's Nellie at? I love you. That will be $5. Take care." I don't really know what $5 means, but when he said this, it was all directed at his family, made up of 5 people, all in attendance. Coincidence? From Texas to Florida, and from a lesser-known killer to one of the most well-known killers. Let's move on to
My experience with, I'd say, pornography generally, but with pornography that deals on a violent level with sexuality, is that once you become addicted to it, and I look at this as a kind of addiction, like other kinds of addiction, I would keep looking for more potent, more explicit, more graphic kinds of material. Like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder, something which gives you a greater sense of excitement.
Ted Bundy is one of the most notorious serial killers known to the world. He's been the subject of countless films and documentaries for his various acts of abuse and violence perpetrated throughout the 70s. Bundy, in his time, murdered more than 30 women. Many claim that Bundy's final words are nothing more than the means of a sociopath to elicit sympathy from the ones he hurt most. It doesn't necessarily mean they actually mean what they're saying. In the case of Bundy, nobody will ever really know. His final words, for many, were creepy, considering the heinous nature of Ted's crimes. Ted Bundy was thrown in the electric chair on the 24th of January, 1989. Bundy's final words were, "I'd like you to give my love to my family and my friends." Oh, Ted, you creep. Creep seems fair. The thing about psychos is you never really know what the hell is going on in their head. And in the case of Ted Bundy, I'm not sure the truth will ever really be known or understood. Speaking of never understanding a psycho.
How have you prepared yourself for tomorrow morning?
I'm all right with it. Yeah, I'm ready to go. Hey, I was tortured at BCI.
Eileen Wuornos was a prolific criminal between 1989 and 1990. Over 7 bodies of middle-aged white men were all discovered throughout Central Florida. They'd been robbed and shot before Eileen stole their cars. Eileen never showed remorse for her actions. She dropped all attempts at getting off death row when she claimed that she'd do it again if released, and even stated, "I have hate crawling through my system." During her time in prison, she accused everyone from guards to prisoners of tainting her food and torturing her. Eileen Wuornos was executed via lethal injection on the 9th of October 2002. Her final words were weird, to say the least. I think weird might be an understatement. Before execution, Eileen Wuornos looked at the executioner and everyone else to deliver this haunting set of final words. "I'd just like to say, I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie, big mothership and all. I'll be back." Well, that was a whole bunch of WTF. Don't worry, we're not done with crazy just yet. Our next death row serial killer was a religious man. Too bad that religion was praising Satan.
A serial killer comes about by circumstances and like a recipe: poverty, drugs, child abuse. These things, contribute to a person, to a person's frustration and anger, and at some point in life, he explodes.
Between 1984 and 1985, Richard Ramirez terrorized California and was nicknamed the Night Stalker. Across LA County, he'd break into homes and use various weapons like guns, knives, and even hammers to butcher his victims. Ramirez didn't discriminate in who he attacked. His youngest victim was 6, and his oldest was 83. Before killing his victims, he'd Finally, in 1989, the serial killer and devout Satan worshipper was brought to justice. He was sentenced to death for 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 13 burglaries. Richard Ramirez, while sentenced to death, died just before his execution in 2013. His final reported words were, "Hail Satan." It's funny, because when it comes to the next death row murderer, we have someone who might as well be the devil.
That one mother that gets on television all the time who thinks I should be given 33 injections, I think she ought to take 33 Valiums and go lay down.
Also known as the Killer Clown, John Wayne Gacy was responsible for the murders of over 33 young men and boys. Gacy would lure his victims in with the promise of a job, drugs, alcohol, or money for sex. Otherwise, he'd simply grab them off the street or con them using a sheriff's badge. Before murdering and burying the bodies, Gacy would and torture his victims repeatedly. In Gacy's private life, he was a member of the Jolly Joker Clown Club, which is one of the reasons for his nickname, the Clown. The other reason, he'd always tell his victims as he killed them, "This is the final trick." After repeatedly playing tricks on them as a means of torture, John Wayne Gacy was executed via lethal injection on the 10th of May, 1994. His final words, emblematic of his lacking empathy or ownership of his crimes, were, "Kiss my ass." At the end of the day, the not-so-charming John Wayne Gacy was nothing more than a clown. Let's imagine his character's name was Bozo. Well, Bozo's act was cut short, and thank God for that. But our next death row inmate was a fighter who fought against the very same capital punishment that took the lives of many on this list. He wasn't successful, but he tried.
It caught me off guard. I didn't expect it. I didn't think mine would be the first one signed. After it was signed, though, well, it was just something he had to accept.
John Spenkelink was a drifter who was charged and convicted of murdering a traveling companion. Spenkelink never wavered in his convictions that what he did was done out of self-defense. Spenkelink was the first man to be placed on death row in Florida after the US Supreme Court reinstated capital punishment in 1976. Spenkelink was executed via electric chair on the 25th of May, 1979. His final words, a comment on the system of capital punishment as a whole, were, "Capital punishment. Them without the capital get the punishment." For everyone on this list, John Spenkelink fought against the reinstatement of the death penalty in the US. While he wasn't successful and ended up being the first in Florida to get the death penalty, our final death row inmate is thankfully not another person from Florida, which, judging by this list, puts the capital in capital punishment. Honestly, after the amount of death row inmates that have died in Florida, I wonder if Florida needs to be arrested and tried as a serial killer.
I mean, you're a board that dispenses privilege, and I've always thought that privileges were sought, desired, earned, and deserved. And I seek nothing from you. I don't desire anything from you. I haven't earned anything. I don't deserve anything either.
Gary Gilmore was the first man to be executed following the Supreme Court decision allowing capital punishment to resume in the United States in 1976. Gilmore was convicted of murdering a motel manager in Utah, which resulted in his death sentence. Interesting fact, but Nike advertising executive Dan Whedon actually credited Gary Gilmore's final words as the inspiration behind the shoe brand's tagline. Gary Gilmore was executed via firing squad on the 17th of January, 1977. His final words were, "Let's do it."